For those who may be living under a rock and have no clue what we're talking about, Doge is the Department of Government Efficiency. So it's two pieces of it. It's creating efficiency, and the second piece of it is actually deregulating in a way that makes sense.
I've heard more concerns about Doge from government than from industry. And if Doge does what they're professing to do, they're going to cut positions in government, creating more contractor positions.
There's no way I believe that slashes that they claim they're going to cut can exist without impacting those senators and Congress people in their districts.
You cannot go with this with an axe. You have to go with this with the scalpel.
Because the FIDEP is 5 years. So they don't know what's been spent wherever, but they're going to change something that's 5 years ago and then fix that in 2 years.
We have similar types of things happening in the UK, and especially when we have a change of government, that's the first thing they want to do. They want to cause efficiency.
Kind of throw it out. We'll start with what is Doge and what are the impacts you guys anticipate as a result of Doge being implemented under the Trump administration? And you can go in any order you want.
So I'll throw this out there. Doge to me is redundant. The US government has a law that was passed in 2010 called Government Performance and Reform Modernization Act. And that act required agencies to undertake initiatives to increase efficiency across the government, establish better metrics at every level. It also created a position in the federal agencies called a Performance Improvement Officer, and they are held accountable to the White House, OMB, on exactly how they're doing things year over year. There are reports they create that are called performance plans and performance reviews, where they have to make public their progress in achieving greater efficiency. So for me, Doge has kind of been there, done that already. I think they have a slightly different agenda, which is to truly come in and slash. What I will say is that I've heard more concerns about Doge from government than from industry. There are, I think, from the industry standpoint, I came out of the Intel community and DoD, and we always watch the administration change. For me, this is one of the uptick opportunities where contractors are going to see more work coming out. And if Doge does what they're professing to do, they're going to cut positions in government, creating more contractor positions.
Awesome. I agree. T had a slightly different perspective last week. So T, go ahead and kind of, for those who were here, they'll hear a little bit of a recap, but it's a lot of people who were not here. T, kind of giving your perspective.
The beginning part, first of all, what you said, Guy, I agree as one option to how this thing can go, right? Ideally, for all of us here, that's what happens. Now, I also know that these things were said on the campaign trail, and I know people have promises they're going to try to pretend to keep, right? And so, as long as they can check the box to say that I tried to do this or I set this up, then they can sort of check the box, wash their hands of it. Now, based on the people that they have in charge of it, all right, Ramaswamy and Musk. Musk, obviously, he backs the actual Doge crypto coin. There's no coincidence there. So automatically, I don't take it as seriously because I see that he's using it to improve his wallet in this area where you can't see. So that's the first thing. And so obviously it gets you to raise your eyebrow. Now, those two individuals are successful businessmen. You cannot look at the federal government, Department of Defense, most importantly, the Veterans Affairs, Department of Veterans Affairs, you can't look at that like a business, because businesses aren't, people don't go and die for businesses. They go and die for a country. They've raised their hand to go and potentially die for their country. And so you can't look at it the same way and just slash, because those same uh, jobs exist somewhere within the United States. And so they have Congress people and senators who they are responsible for making sure that they keep their jobs. So there's no way, I believe, that slashes that they claim they're going to cut can exist without impacting those senators and Congress people in their districts. And so with that happening, they're going to shut all that down. And so if they were to target the things that they could target, then it's going to affect the bigger contracting companies, because they target the amount of money that Lockheed is charging for canopy for F-22, right? It'll be good for us because we bring in lower prices. But for them to potentially do it, they have to hit them, and they're not going to do that because they actually put money into the campaigns, and they actually, spend money on some of these other things through lobbying. So I don't think it's going to happen. So my last part about that is they want to pretend that they're going to cut the whole platform, big government, cut it down, et cetera, et cetera. Well, not to get into the political Project 25 Section F thing. God knows what I'm talking about. Kirsten knows what I'm talking about. They're cutting these certain positions. So while that sounds good, that's where our corporate knowledge exists. So as new administrations come in, and they bring in their own, like, 3,000 people at the top level of the federal government, they can switch out. They don't affect much, right? They don't have the corporate knowledge that keeps us running. Now, we all know that, yes, government is slow, but I don't have any grandparents still living, but they were older, they were slow, right? They were slower in movement and whatnot, but they were wise. They were wise. They were the corporate knowledge within our family, right? They knew what happened, when it happened, who's likely to do this, and they helped us all be on this program tonight. And so they're necessary. Just because they aren't the most efficient, the question is, how effective are they? And so cutting some of those positions may be great, but again, how many of those people are going to get cut to the point that they're going to go to their Congress people and whatnot to say, hey, this shouldn't happen? Like guys said, there have been different things that try to make it more efficient. That's possible, but it's just like term limits. Congress has the power to affect it, but it's going to affect them being reelected. So unfortunately, that whole die on the sword for my country is not going to happen at the district level for them to make that decision. So I think it's, again, we can check the box, say we did it, and I said the last part of this last thing is one of the most, I guess, critical things that they want to cut has to do with energy efficiency, right? Electric cars and all these different things. Who benefited the most from those subsidiaries for electric cars than Elon Musk? He wouldn't have survived without the thing that he is purporting to try to cut. And if he tries, then you're going to have everybody come out there with pitchforks and whatnot, and saying, like, hey, you can't let this happen because, President Trump, you can't let this happen because this individual used our money to help him. Now he wants to cut us. You can't cut thousands of people like you can at Tesla, and then expect the country to not stand out there in front of these Congress people and senators' houses.
No, I agree. I'll just chime in here. And I seen you, Serena. I'm gonna bring you up here in a minute. I'm gonna take one of your analogies, T, which was, you cannot go with this with an axe. You have to go with this with the scalpel. Now, for those who may be living under a rock and have no clue what we're talking about, Doge is the Department of Government Efficiency. They got two mandates. They're only going to be around for about 24 months. I believe the commission winds down around April, May, summerish of 26. So only got about 24 to 26 months to do the heavy lifting. There are two primary objectives of Doge, and they've just got a new person who just got added who's volunteered for the commission. For those who kind of follow venture capital, there's Mark Andreessen, who used to be the owner of Netflix. He has now decided to also join the Doge commission and volunteer. Now, with all of that aside, there's two primary things. Number one, they want to look for inefficiencies and reduce them. Kind of like think about it for my folks who got Lean Six Sigma backgrounds, think about it as a leaning event. And then they also want to reduce regulation. So it's two pieces of it. It's creating efficiency, and the second piece of it is actually deregulating in a way that makes sense, at least according to them. Now, when I was looking around earlier, I got the Project 2025 book up here, but I can't find it right away. This is just two bookcases up here. But I was looking for it, and I was going to pull a section F because I know there was like, what is Tevin talking about? But so those are the things I want you to keep in mind. Now, someone put in a comment in the chat, and I agree with them. I believe, and some Tevin may disagree with me, Guy even may disagree with me. I think what this is going to do, I think it's going to create opportunity for small business. Now, and then I'm going to go into a little bit of the conversation Guy and I had last night. This is going to cause all of my quote unquote middlemen and women to die on the vine. You will not be able to sub out all of the work. You can't now because this goes against the FAR, but sub out all of the work and think that you're not going to be vulnerable. This is the type of program that is going to target you, because that is going to be deemed as an inefficient use of government resources. I'm going to pay T, and T don't have no staff, no infrastructure, and he's going to turn around and take every dime of revenue and give it to subcontractor A, B, C, and D. And so, in effect, Tevin will have created a pass-through and will be providing no real value to the agencies, which is inefficient. So these are the times where you're going to have to really double down on what's the value, understanding the problem, understanding the product and service catalog, and being able to really differentiate the product and services that you're selling and what is the value. Whether we're talking about an LPTA environment, because they still have to go in and do an evaluation of all of the evaluation factors and then reduce costs first. Now, I recognize everyone does not follow the FAR per se, and I don't know if Anna jumped on here yet. Anna has been a contracting officer for a long time. She can probably read us our rights on FAR, but you still going to have to be able to approve to justify why they should pick you out of all the companies. You're not the first. You're not going to be the last. Tevin is not the only company out here doing logistics work and the like. Me and Guy ain't the only ones out here doing intel and cybersecurity services. So you're going to have to justify the value. Whoever else want to chime in.
Could I circle back?
Yep, absolutely.
One thing I brought the other day that I forgot, the last three things, is that billionaires have egos, right? They believe they can do anything because they made money, right? They forget all the mistakes they made. But again, they have people to dump money back into the business to make it successful, right? You can't do that with government. So now you have people with no government experience. The three people you named, the top three people, zero government experience other than getting money from the government. But they're going to come in and rescue the government from expenditures, right? I don't believe that. Second, we talked about like Scalpel. You brought that up that we talked about before, is like a surgeon, right? That's what you're going to do. So we're going to have individuals come in here saying that they're coming with a machete. They're very clear. They're doing this and that. And so, with no experience to come in with a machete to operate on the federal government. Don't see that ending well. And lastly, the 2-year thing, and that's what made me circle back. 2-year is laughable because the FIDEP is 5 years. So they don't know what's been spent wherever, but they're going to change something that's 5 years ago and then fix that in 2 years. I just want to get my popcorn and see how that's going to work. And at the same time, I do expect us to benefit from their initial attempt. But But anyway, those are my 3 points.
No,
I'm done.
no, you good. Now I know Adrian's in the
Yeah,
UK, so I don't
I
know
can
if
chime
Adrian
in.
has a
Yeah, I
perspective.
can chime in. I'd love
Go
to
ahead.
chime in on some of this. I love this conversation. It's really interesting from this side of the pond. We have similar types of things happening in the UK, as in many countries across the world. So it's not just the UK or the West, in many countries. And especially when we have a change of government, that's the first thing they want to do. They want to cause efficiency. They want to cut down on inefficiency. They want to, they give all of these promises. And we've got some which are coming in quite imminently within our organizations and within our government at the moment. But one thing that we learn is that from history, that this is only as good as the data and the information that is based upon, the information that we have. And so, when you're making your decisions, if you're not making it from a pool of information that is correct or joint or uniform, and that's what causes a lot of inefficiencies, is um, the way that information is collated or reported or used across a variety of different agencies. What you call good information in one is not the same as in the other. And so you're trying to make a decision based upon that. And that's where you have holes. We have that across a number of our agencies. And yes, you can cut something over here, but if you don't see where that is linked to, what other part of the body that is linked to, and the dependencies on that, you don't see the effect that it has. And normally the effect that you see doesn't happen for much longer than that 2 years that you might be involved in this that they're seeing. So I'd be very interested to see if people can do it. And as you said, there are so many areas of let's call conflict of interest between the parties that are running and making those decisions and the decisions that are made. We have the same thing over here. Um, we've had it for a number of years, and I think any uh, government country that has what we call this so-called what would we call it? The so-called um, civilized government will have these types of things. You've got personalities, as T was saying, you've got conflicting personalities, you've got conflicting agendas. And I think that overall, to try and do something like this within 2 years, it's going to be, it's such a short period. But, consequently, as you said, the successes of these types of initiatives is that you have more transparency sometimes if you can deliver it properly. And more transparency then gives you the greater ability to understand what's happening across, greater regions, bigger areas, bigger spheres of influence. I think, you've got more transparency. Sometimes you have more accountability based upon that. But I agree with some of the comments that have been made. I think it does make it a bit easier for some of the smaller businesses to come in and be champions in these spaces or these niche spaces. You're still going to have to succeed in the way that you did previously. You're going to have to be more agile, I believe. You're going to have to be a bit more prepared in advance to deliver and prove some of the statements that you make. Just like Curtis, as you said, I'm against this middleman over here in the UK. It's quite an illegal practice to follow. It doesn't benefit because all you're doing is adding another layer of spend ultimately because somebody has to manage that. Unless you're working in a space where you have what's called like a managing agent, a lot of these construction spaces and those areas like that. But it just adds another area of spend which can be cut out. Well, why not go direct to somebody that can deliver it, big or small, as opposed to having somebody that can influence that as a middleman?
So, Kurt, I want to jump in for 1 second because T's got me fired up right now. So T started the whole conversation about the 2 years. Adrian added to it, and I want to just talk about the significance of 2 years. So T talked about the insignificance of it. When you talk about the palm and things like this, yeah, it's a blip. But when you talk about the significance of it, a presidential administration is 4 years. All right, what happens in 2 years? Okay, we got the midterms. All right, They want to have stuff to talk about. They want to have things to be able to, beat their chest and say, look at what we did. That's why Doge exists. All right. It is, if you can go and show how the previous administration messed up so badly and wasted your time and money and say, look at what our efficiency group did, then they're going to win the House and the Senate again and all that kind of stuff. So that's one part of it. One of the other comments in there, Gloria, I see you out there. So the Republicans have both parts of Congress by a shoestring, quite honestly. In fact, one of the representatives that had told Republicans they were going to caucus with him just changed her mind. So now that majority is that thin. And so the majority is not that big of a deal right now. I'm not worried about that. And by the way, I looked up, just because I get bored easily, I looked up the process for creating a new department in the federal government. Yeah, it ain't happening. All right, it's not going to happen. So it is exactly what T said. It's a commission. All right, at best. It's got an 18-month life expectancy. They have no authority to enforce anything. They can make recommendations, and then game over. They're done.
Facts. All right, we're gonna move because we'll camp out on Doge all night. But I'm before I jump to the next question, I'm gonna let Serena introduce herself, and then Serena and Dr. G will tee up the next question.